All right, and looks like everything's working, nothing's wrong, and I'm not coughing up a lung, which is unfortunately a change that is now new, and I'm okay with. More importantly, you guys know the deal. I'm going to be doing a live stream today because that means this is live and everything I say will be recorded forever for all of my shame. I do this willingly. What is wrong with me? Oh yeah, I'm on YouTube. That would do it. More importantly, hi everyone, I'm Airier, and today we're checking out episode 34 of Star Wars for Warhammer 40K, the Omega Operation. Sorry, Operation Omega. I keep reading this backwards. Specifically backwards. Usually I just get words all over the place. No, this time it's specifically backwards and inserting a the. Out of everything, the is the weird part to me. More importantly, I made a stupid joke in the title about this being the Alpharius option. If that's actually where this goes, I'm going to... I was going to say eat my shoe, but if I have anything to go by on previous issues, I will be right about that, and I will have to eat my shoe. And I'm not making that mistake again. I already have to read 50 Shades of Grey on stream, man. I don't want to do that again. Or the next 2 times I still have to do in the future. I need to get around to that. Yeah. So, you guys know the deal? In the chat, Fan may or may not be here, so there may or may not be spoilers. And or him being a troll, so that's a thing. And we're going to jump right into it. Also, because I've been massively sick for half a month, I have no idea how long this video will go for because I might die. I'm not sure that's a joke. We'll find out. I hope it's a joke. I really do. It would suck if it's not. I would be very unhappy with that option. 9 out of 10 people who die say they don't want to do it again. Don't ask how the 10th one went. Meh. Also, just arranging the camera. I think everything's good. Yeah, I got this down to an art form. Specifically, a finger painting by a 5-year-old's level of art. Technically, though, still an art form. Yeah, this is what you miss when I put up a video and cut out all of this. I put up a video yesterday, and I accidentally left in the first few minutes where I was just whistling a random ditty that was in my head. And I'm like, oh, that's embarrassing. I was whistling right into the mic. Yeah, that was on me. More importantly, just gonna set this up quickly. I usually just skip over Fan's intro because I have no idea if he's copyrighted his music or not. I probably could ask him in the chat, but I'm not sure if he's here today. Also, Slices Lemon said, Happy Irish... Oh, yeah, it's St. Patrick's Day, isn't it? I keep forgetting about that. This is greenish. It has some green, not sponsored. And with how much I drink, they would be able to still get their money back. Thank you. Liquid not sleeping enough. I should fix that. No, never mind, I won't. Gaming takes priority. Now, where were we? Ooh. Star Wars Warhammer 40K. Oh, is Fan having tech issues again? Episode 34. So there's a marching theme? Operation Omega. Blocky words, so nothing too stylized. I wonder if this is going to be with some of the... Oh, the people who rescued the Gene Stealer lady. Yeah.
They brought her into the simulation room, but it was not the normal setting they were used to. The genius young strategist and her team of clone cadets had been training feverishly for over a week.
I don't know these people.
The members of the child cadre hastily drawn from the best test-scoring clones in their fields.
Really? I mean, I'm guessing we're going with a picture from the Clone Wars here, so it's probably something that actually happened, but why would some identical clones be significantly smarter than others? Probably for the same reason some are not actually as smart as others, or faster, or stronger. I guess there is deviation. Huh.
They were often moved from place to place.
There's that much change. There
but
be
their simulation room, where they trained for the battle that was fast approaching, had only changed twice. Once near the start,
so the war's coming to Geonosis?
Today. It was smaller, more compact and advanced, or so it
seemed. That happened after the Empire took over, though.
The many young clones who had trained around her to aid her facilitating her purpose sat in stations all around where she was destined to stand. Each bald boy wearing interface head packages and focused on their consoles. The support stations in the previous training room had been in large, circular areas, which moved and rotated to simulate potential battlefield conditions. These were fixed, small, and sunken into the walls and floor of the relatively cramped space. It looked serious, military, real. Wiping her eyes, Omega looked up at
Because
Nalase.
it's simulations.
A clear question held there, though her yawn smothered it somewhat. Nalase's passive face betrayed nothing, but she began to answer the unspoken query nonetheless, not bothering to wait for Omega to draw in another breath for the
Okay, and I'm being told in the chat that Omega is one of the characters I never knew about because I never got this far in Clone Wars, and her being a clone was not me just mishearing it. So she's smarter, intentionally designed that way. Also female. Huh. That's not really a clone anymore. They've offered enough genetic diversity there that that's just a child. A genetically modified child, but that's just a child. I know it's lore, technically to call them a clone, but it's like the androids in Dragon Ball Z. They're cyborgs, but we just call them androids. That's just what we accept. Also, Xenodragon. Hey, man. And I want to add you on Helldivers too so we could die together. And I'm Irish and Scottish with German and Norwegian blood. Ah, yes, a fellow mutt. Nice. I also have enough ancestry to hopefully make up for the fact that in there somewhere is definitely English nobility. And if you know anything about what I just said, that's not a good thing. Yeah. But, yeah, sure, I'd love to add you on Helldivers as soon as I figure out how to do that. I've only got the game to work literally within the last 3 days. So,
obvious question. This is the special command ship we will use in the future when you are performing your duties for the Republic. It is called the Oracle, and when in service, it will allow you to directly coordinate fleet resources, just as you did in the simulator. The tall,
they actually are
slender
Ender's
alien
Gaming it
said
then.
as she escorted the youthful,
Granted, that's how they're training all the clones.
sleepy clone to the entry point leading onto the command mat. Omega paused to stretch, already dressed in her proper interface command suit, which was not so different from what she normally wore.
Interface command suit?
So, does that mean I'm on a real mission this time?
They have interface command suits. Oh my god, they actually have plug suits. I'm showing my nerd here, but I'm sure at this point everyone's aware of that. Oh my god, I don't even...
Omega asked, both excited and nervous at the prospect, but Nalase dampened her reaction with a shake of her head. Omega had been made to fight in tens, if not hundreds, of different Axum-oriented battle simulations.
Oh, so she's training for Axum.
Sometimes she had larger fleets, sometimes very small ones. Sometimes she had new ships, and...
Wait. She's training to be the fleet commander for the battle at Axum? I'm actually a little surprised about this because I really thought Palpatine would micromanage that to hell and back because power. Granted, he's usually good about giving up power to other people and delegating. Mostly because he's already kind of fucking around and saying it's done. Huh. Oh, and Matthew Doherty says, she was made to be Ender, so calling it an Ender. Yeah, she's literally the fleet commander child that everyone listens to. Now, if only they had a bomb that just erased matter if it connected to other matter. Then it would be a literal comparison to Ender's Game. I've read some of the sequels. Yeah. Yeah, don't do that.
Sometimes the ships she faced were entirely new. A scenario which had become completely routine after the third day.
But would they have enough
Achieving
information to
victory
simulate
had
the
been
Empire?
hard,
Or Imperium?
but not impossible. However, the maneuvers and choices it had required of Omega weighed heavily on her, in spite of the fact these battles had been naught but simulations.
In other words,
The
she doesn't like throwing
prospect
people
of
away yet.
cruelly spending the lives of her brothers in actual combat haunted her more greatly with every passing night. No, today is your first time using this system, and we are still testing the viability of the Oracle and the surrounding
that's what they call
crew
it?
of
The
clones.
Oracle?
You
Huh.
will be running a high-intensity training mission against the enemy you have been contending with.
Who?
The objectives will be laid out before you.
Who are they
as per
simulating?
usual. It will be up to you to decide how to approach and the tactics used by the Armada. The Kaminoan lied.
Oh, so this is... If they're lying, that it's actually a... They're literally Ender's Gaming it. Not just the simulation of a child who's running a simulation, but also the child running a simulation, and spoilers if you haven't read the book, a child running a simulation who's actually not running a simulation is the real fight, and all your brothers are dead now because you said certain things you get to find out later for guilt. Because that's actually how that went down. It was not the worst ending.
Omega sighed and smiled, finishing up
Omega
her
know that?
brief stretch. Another simulation, another point-scoring exercise. Disturbing as giving suicidal commands was, it was no different from sacrificing a piece to gain the advantage in a game of dejarik. At least, as long as it was not real. But something
but
else
it's real.
also stood out to
Do they
the
know that
altered
yet?
clone.
Doesn't seem like it.
Oh, an armada? That sounds like a lot of ships this time. Is this the full fleet simulation? Omega asked,
It's the
grinning
actual
at her
ship fight,
caretaker as
isn't
she
it?
stepped up onto the soft, black footing of the circular command mat, taking the special gloves and headset that rested there and placing them on. Yes, this new system is powerful enough to fully simulate your likely future encounter, which will be very soon. It has
Like,
been
even you could say
upgraded to
now.
provide a hyper-realistic scenario meant to take you off your guard. Nala Se continued to lie. But this is still just more training? Omega.
I actually feel the urge to pick up a copy of Ender's Game, which I'm not sure I have or not, just to compare the scenes right now to see how close Fan might be getting to the book itself. Because I swear I've heard this dialogue before, but again, I haven't read that book in literally decades. So, yeah, the comparison, man.
clarified,
Shit.
adjusting the headset which ringed her forehead and then looking at her creator. Nala Se paused, blinking slowly. Nala Se? Omega asked.
What is she saying?
You are ready, Omega. This is not training for you. It is fine-tuning for the rest of us. If you fail here, then all of these clones, this equipment, and even myself will be replaced. The crew around us will be separated and redeployed.
Now, this is interesting. Just because in general, every time I see a Kaminoan displayed in any single form of media, they're usually displayed as somehow almost worse than Palpatine in terms of amorality. Not that Palpatine is, amoral. He's flat out evil because he enjoys it way more. But in just the lack of morality, the Kaminoans are pretty high up there. They're not evil, but they're willing to do it because fuck it, why not? This is probably the most moral Kaminoan I've seen yet, and I'm only saying that because I've never seen a depiction of them that ever had the bar set higher than literally buried under the ground. I'm not exactly looking at this fairly, I realize. But just even giving her this much of an option of, yeah, treat this as if it's real, but it's not, but also you should probably treat it that way, is kind of shocking me because it shows that fans depicting them as not nearly as we are an entire species of douchebags, which, hell, I think even canon kind of treats them that way.
This ship will be pulled apart and remade, and you will be put in the care of another, one who
Probably
might better
one with a gun
facilitate
to their
your
head.
preparation.
Have I watched the
The
Bad Batch?
cloner lied.
Martini, I'm very behind, not
Omega's
even close to the Bad Batch
expression
season
fell
1.
instantly, her pale
the Clone
face
Wars
paling
ending.
further, eyes widening. Well, wait,
Have
but
they figured
why?
it out, though?
Haven't I been doing good? I won 4 of the last 6 encounters. The clone pleaded suddenly. Nala Se nodded sadly. You have
4
done
of the 6.
excellently, Omega. Better than I had ever
So they're doing
predicted.
good, but they're
And-
also still losing the
And
simulations.
the others in the program agree. Thus, if there is any deficiency in your performance, it must
Hey,
not
fans
be
in the chat,
due
nice.
to you. It must be caused by something around you. We are
Also, one. Hey, Xeno Dragon, thank you for the 5 gifted memberships, man. Thanks. Dude. It's always
nearly
fun to see.
out of time. Soon the Republic will call upon you, upon the Oracle. In that time, the whole system, not just you, must be ready. The cloner
Still treating it like a
said,
training manual.
further explaining her fabricated rationale. But you and the rest of the team, you are part of my system. Omega admitted, her voice soft.
As close as they're
defeated.
going to get to saying
Her
family.
creator reached down and stroked her chin, pulling her gaze back up. Then you have everything you need.
Ender's Game
believe in
intensifies
you,
somehow.
Omega. Deployment time is in 45 minutes. All the data you need is at your disposal, she said. Omega suddenly rushed forward and hugged the Kaminoan's leg, taking Nalase by surprise, but only for a moment. The alien resting her long-fingered hand on the human clone's back. Will you be nearby? Omega asked.
Out of the splash zone, probably.
I will be watching from the bridge. Now, Omega, it is time, she said gently, the mutant clone pulling herself away from her foreign creator.
See, my problem right now isn't so much all the references to Ender's Game, which are so goddamn prevalent. It's that they're so prevalent that it kind of begs for another similarity. If this metaphor continues beyond just a passing similarity here to phrase how this entire scene is going, it won't just be that it's a kid trained to fight a battle in another location as the commander without realizing the people they're throwing to death are actually being thrown to death. It's that there's going to be super weapons involved that may or may not cause massive amounts of, oh my god, what the fuck did I just do later? I mean, can you imagine Palpatine throwing around super weapons when they already have a bomb on the planet that has some horrible things in there? I mean, that... it's not like the vast majority of the combat-capable Jedi are on the planet right now, and that would just be a happy accident for Sheev Palpatine if he happened to have a clone do it. It wouldn't even be his fault. I mean, that would just be... I'm probably wrong. I'm definitely wrong. Why do I think I'm not wrong? Oh, God. This is going to be a cute little girl doing horrible, horrible things. Aww.
And looking up at her, nodding her small face in a resolute way. Okay, I won't let you down, she said, saluting before stepping back onto the black control mat. Nalase watched on for a moment, and then turned around and headed back out through the doors. Omega's command platform elevating to be between all the clone stations around her. It was a circle of vibrant blue, red, and green holograms which lit up in concentric rings around her, gradually resolving into the finer details of the coming engagement.
Also, I probably should mention this while I still remember, because knowing me, I'll forget. The music choice fan made right here is actually really nice because it seems sweet and youthful, which really complements the character they're focusing on. Focusing, there's the word. Focusing on. Because whenever they're talking, it's this little kid who's intelligent. He even used Ender's Game. I never watched the movie. I have no idea what scene this is from, but I recognize the name Bean Man. He was the other MC that kind of got used later in levels of interest. His story always felt kind of wasted. But yeah, so even Fan is intentionally aware of the Ender's Game thing. But I do like the music, though. I'm not sure if it's from somewhere. And it does really characterize Omega as someone who's hopeful. And you know that as soon as that music changes, it's going to be something much more depressing.
Standing on the circular
Kubik's
mat,
here too. Nice.
she seemed to float amidst the data, queuing up and dismissing reports, maps, and various displays with her hands and thoughts. Soon, Nalase was watching from the cameras on the bridge as Omega and her cadre of clone teammates discussed which of their many devised approaches they would choose to engage the presented enemy fleet. Half of them busy marveling at how enormous their given force was. Lama Su came to stand just behind her, his calculating eyes narrowed.
That is a name.
You chose not to tell her the truth. This is no test. If she does fail here, there is a good chance we may not survive it.
Oh, so they were actually okay with telling them that it was real. I'm actually surprised about that. My initial assumption was they were intentionally lying to Omega so that she would have less compunction against absolute suicidal charges if she thought it was necessary. But no, apparently this was actually a attempt to be nice to them so they would act as if it's real, but also not have as much pressure on them. Yeah, even though my intention, like my intentional thoughts, I can't seem to speak today. I blame being sick. My entire way of looking at this seems wrong. That initial thought I was going to about how the characters are so much, at least on the Kaminoan side, kinder and more empathetic. It's just Even if it's just this one, they're just nicer than I'm used to seeing them depicted. It's actually kind of interesting.
Both before the battle's conclusion and after, if we survive to face the Supreme Chancellor. Admiral Tarkin was clear on his expectations for the Omega Command initiative, and what would become of
Tarkin
it
set it
if
up.
it failed to deliver on
I mean, at this time, if they die,
the
then they're all
alien
dead.
statesman
Tarkin
said,
probably dies too.
Voice cool and dispassionate. Omega is ready in all but one way. Nala Se said
Having
in
one?
response, we made the clones to act as a unit, a cohesive whole. Because of this, it is often the case that harming one will harm the entire pod in some way. Omega is a variation, but she is not far removed from this programming. In fact, I
because
suspect
clones are
she may
programmed.
be especially susceptible to it. Most of our own
Empathy.
dedicated command clones have demonstrated difficulty in issuing orders which are sure to result in large quantities of their forces being killed, even if the result would be a projected victory. What
it,
is
though?
being asked of Omega is many times the magnitude of that. She explained, and you fear that if she were to know the real cost of her tactical decisions, she would be unable to perform her function?
Okay, so apparently my initial assumption about why they weren't telling her was right. Maybe I should reassess if it's empathetic then. Also, Xenodragon, you wrote, I know you have a lot of vids to react to, but is the PGR trailer fan video still on the list? It is Xenodragon, but also I forgot and I lost it in the track because there's been so many things put into the what to watch folder in Discord, so you might need to post it again just because I've lost all of it. Also, hey, the Burb of Judge. I don't know why the of throws me off there. You never talk to me directly, and you're just here to keep spoilers away. Thank you again for that, because I know a lot of people, fan himself, could possibly drop spoilers in there, and I am very much guilty of looking at them.
Lama Su asked. Nala Se shook her head.
How much of this is...
I
how much
suspect
is
it
her
might
being...
impair her willingness to deploy the most effective tactics.
Probably.
We have been training her in simulations, and her results have proven more than adequate for the Republic's needs. However, altering any aspect of the parameters we have been operating by may alter the results of her performance. All I have done is ensure that our operational parameters remain as close to those within test conditions as is possible. The chief medical officer of Camino explained, once more lying, though not as much.
Oh! Now that's interesting. I thought we were going to get the lying when we were seeing when she was talking to the kid, but no, she's lying to the other person, so maybe I was right again about it being somewhat empathetic to be nice to Omega. Dude, I like how there's many twists and turns in such a simple conversation.
Much as before. Lama Su considered and then seemed to accept what she had told him with a gentle sway of his head. And is that why you threatened her with the removal of her system? I certainly hope the extra pressure does not alter those testing conditions too much.
Gives her a little
He
bit
said,
of
looking
the
up
intensity
and
that is
away
real.
from Nala Se, who shook her head in response. I felt it appropriate to invent some pressure to stand in place of the reality of the situation. She said, looking up as well, seeing through the windows on the bridge and casting her sight out across the absolutely massive Republic Armada. That stretch of winding ship steel reached beyond what even her keen eyes could process, as more and more vessels aligned themselves into the fighting ranks of the Grand Navy Palpatine had created.
I have mixed feelings about what I'm about to do. Because on the one hand, it's Palpatine who created this, and I'm going to feel guilty for the absolute geek out I am going to have if fan gives any descriptions of a giant armada of freaking spaceships, man. Because I freaking love spaceships armada. This is literally my thing, and I just... If it wasn't Palpatine, I'd feel much better about this. Even the Imperium side, I'd feel a little better about this. Maybe not the certain chapter of... Sorry, I was going to say their name. I apologize. Team Red. My apologies. just because they're creepy and the cannibalistic indulgences. Yeah. But I'm sorry, man. Spaceships, even if they're the evil guys.
Those monoliths of war bathed in the many colors of the nearby sun. Glorious and deadly. The clones of Kaminoan design marching and working within each vessel like the life's blood of massive beasts. An army worthy of the supreme chancellor of the Galactic Republic. Or rather, his new supreme commander, whom they were departing to retrieve. It was hard for Nalase to imagine that the mailed fist of the Republic's might, gathered as it was, could be defeated by anything.
Oh, why did you have to say that? I mean, dear God, fan, that is not a leading image. That is not foreshadowing. That is just asking Murphy to go and just maybe take a bat named Lucille right to your kneecaps and a few other places like your skull. I mean, wow. I thought this might be a close fight. I'm assuming this is going to be a bloodbath. Oh my. Maybe not a loss, but it's definitely not going to be a win.
But then again, she would have thought the same of the entire KDY defense fleet. And the president made even her cold blood chill further. But only slightly. Looking down, she refocused her attention on her creation, who grinned at the clones around her, corralling and organizing them, getting them on task. All right, settle down. I think I've got a plan. We need to get in close, right? And we...
Also, I just want to take a second to appreciate the fact that Fan is doing a British equivalent accent for a little girl, and just sounds good enough that it's like, you know what? Yeah, it sounds like a little British girl. Also, that's as close to a British girl accent as I get, and you can understand why I don't do accents. But it actually sounds distinct when he does that, so it's really cool. I wonder if he did these all in one go, or if he actually just recorded all the lines so he could stay in character and then put them together later. Both will be hard in different ways.
We can only jump into the system here, here, and here, yeah? Well, what if we split up the fleet like this, and we came in from here? The young clone said, waving...
Okay, I'm going to make a random tangent about writing. Whenever you're talking about giving direction, you say this, this, and this, and here, here, and here. If it's not interspersed with either some kind of description of what movements are being done, or just as a way to zone out from a conversation, in general, it's kind of empty dialogue. And it's getting the idea across that she's giving directions. And if it was mentioned that this is just something the character would listen to as hearing in the background, that would be one thing, because you're not actually focused on that, you're focused on something else. But the way it's being presented is focusing on Omega right now from someone else's perspective, so you should be aware of what they're doing to their hands to give directions. This is a nitpick of mine because I absolutely hyper obsess over this kind of thing in my own writing and other people's because I'm that asshole. But it is kind of indicative of you just are missing something right there. Like they make a hand motion to go along with a direction because on their own saying here, here, and here in an audio or written format only gives no actual information to the reader. It's literally empty words. When you do here and you add a gesture, or when you do it in a movie or a play, there's something associated with it to give the information that the word is indicating you're providing in another way. That is what the word here, there, this, it is doing. It's taking information from another source to use it somewhere. But when you don't actually do it, it's just filler. It's just not a huge issue. And I know I'm freaking out about it, but this is something I spent way too much time thinking about. Again, Master in Fiction, I freak out about really weird things. This is one, if only because I was hyper obsessed about not doing it myself. Yeah. I don't have any random idiosyncrasies from having to do a master's program. I don't at all. No, I'm going to continue lying about that.
Her hands in conjunction with her thoughts and drafting up three-dimensional displays of plans for the others. Yeah, that would force them to angle. No way to engage without that. But once they do, there's nothing stopping them from just lighting us up like stars at range. Said another of the clones.
And that was a good usage.
But that's the trick. That's why we split the fleet up to jump in here and here. Once the enemy starts to angle, Omega was saying, moving.
It just Omega's dialogue might work if you have a visual medium to do. Hell, if Fan even put up his own little mock-up of what the image looked like, that would be fine, but it's like they jump from Omega, who was just saying here and here without the information attached to it, and then the other person's just like, well, this would do this because you have the description of what it's doing, you understand what they're talking about, but then you go back to Omega going, well, we do this instead, and it's like, I don't know what you're talking about because I have no reference.
The hologram into action with a push of her hand. Whoa, we'll have them right where we want them! Exclaimed another one of the children. Nalase reaffirmed her resolve. Every single one of the life forms in the command center were purpose-made for this. Designed for leadership, for agility of thought, creative approach, and competent command. Her science was not wrong, and their force was larger than any she'd ever seen gathered. The numbers could not lie. Failure was impossible. The only question now was at what cost would victory come? To win one battle and lose 2 wars was no true victory at all. But those were thoughts that she put
Clone
aside
Wars versus the Imperium
and left
War, yeah.
for the likes of the Supreme Chancellor and soon-to-be-recovered Commander. For the Kaminoan,
that information
just
spread fast.
making sure that they could begin to roll back the slew of recent losses would be enough to worry about.
The Lord Admiral and her crew... Wait. Oh, we're going to the Imperium side now. Ooh.
There are so many. The censor's officer muttered from his station, his eyes straining in the dim light, his luminous screen lighting up his stunned face in sick.
Okay, so we're still on Axum, probably.
There, displayed in grainy but legible resolution, were the signals for thousands upon thousands of enemy vessels. Individually, most of their ships were less than half the size of proper cruisers. But with numbers like these, it would take nothing short of a miracle to succeed.
How many ships does the Imperium side have here anyways? I know there's the one ship, but was it only the one ship, or are there like escorts with them? What was left behind? Because I know the majority of the fleet jumped away, but it was maybe mentioned earlier and I just forgot. Huh. And Ripoff Productions, I used as a thumbnail? Yes, I did. This is part of my process of taking off my headphones and paying attention to nothing while I take random screenshots and plus just dropping them together. I have no idea context of anything. It's the only reason I could do this without spoiling myself. And that sentiment was written clearly upon the faces of most of the bridge crew. They had been to hundreds of engagements, and they knew a lost cause when one presented its snarling face to them. "Rally, warriors of the throne!" boomed the voice of Rola Senduran, Lord Admiral of Battle Fleet Zektek. She stood in front of her command throne, her sheathed naval saber held in both hands before her like a cane. Its end pressed into the steel floor, giving... Also, Shane Clark has mentioned that he believes that the Imperium has 200 ships to the Republic's 7,000. So even if they're less than half, when we cut that down to 3,500, that's a pretty big outweighing it. Yeah, that would do it, Shane. That would definitely do it. Her posture an air of irrefutable solidity, as though she were the avatar of her own ship's implacable prow. I mean, we are superior, for all intents and purposes. For we are the Emperor's cold sword and his burning wrath. The enemy we face is numerous, not a space marine there. Pathetic. They might not take their weapons are weak, their range paltry compared to our own. Get me firing solutions on those approaching ships. They have better range, yeah. I want to start pelting them well before they come into the proper combat zone. She ordered, the room moving at her command, even... This might be a weird question, but what is the proper combat zone for the Imperium? Because I think for Fan, he's treating it as long range, but then you have some riders, especially in the Horus Heresy, where ships were functioning exactly the same as in Star Wars, where they would have instantaneous travel functionally and then be shooting at knife fighting distance. And I don't mean that in the pejorative or even the somewhat colloquial term of, you know, within close range combat where you could shoot by sight. I mean, you could actually probably stick your hand out and cut the ship with a knife level. Sometimes there are writers who have done that. I don't personally like that style, but What is it normally? I don't actually know what the actual normal canon approach would be. Huh.
As she continued, "Make ready the Godsbane lances, arm the Nova cannons, and prepare to fire!"
Big guns.
The Lord Admiral demanded.
Lord
I was waiting
Admiral,
for this.
"We cannot attain firing arcs on the enemy,"
Why not?
reported one of the gunnery officers. "Their ships are clustering and sheltering in the shadows of various stellar objects, including several of the system's planets and asteroid fields.
So blow up the
At
planets.
their current trajectories
I mean,
and
waste
rate of
ammunition,
approach, they will be most of the way to us by the time we can get any kind of clear firing solution on their vessels." The reporting man went on. "Damn, I guess they're not suicidal this time." Rolla rumbled, rubbing her
debatable.
cybernetic chin, perfectly disguised as no more than her own familiar flesh.
Wait, what?
Cybernetic, not suicidal this time. Rolla grumbled, rubbing her cybernetic chin, perfectly disguised as no more than her own familiar flesh.
Why a cybernetic chin? It's probably something to do with getting orders out, but that would be more vocal cords. Odd choice, but okay. Yeah, sure. There's probably some reason to it. Maybe a fan will come out with it. I don't know.
Her augmentations went to work, helping her remember past battles,
Why
giving
the
her
chin,
flashes
though?
of both victory and defeat.
I guess there's nothing else to
helping
use for it other than
outline
just
the
having
key
the mask.
aspects of each. She had 3 centuries to draw upon, and she knew she would
Oh.
not get many more.
Oh, she
no
old.
matter how much of her body she replaced, or how many juvenate drugs she chose to pump through her brain.
So not only is she mostly cybernetic, she's also been through a lot of rejuvenation treatments. And I only know some fan art of people who've been through a lot of rejuvenation treatments. Yeah. Suffice to say, it's a good thing she replaced a lot of it with cybernetics, because somehow Mechanicus level cybernetics are less disturbing than some of the art for the people who've just gone through cyber or rejuvenation treatments that many times on their own. It's terrifying. It is legitimately terrifying. It's an interpretation, but it's one that's sometimes backed up.
It was a strange despair for her to see her own death and service slowly but surely crawling into her sight, in spite of everything. But the one benefit, if there was indeed only one, was simply that she was standing upon more dedicated combat experience than her enemies were likely to have. Aside from that, she was more than a fair tactician, even before her.
She is both completely correct and also completely wrong about everything she said. Because on the one hand, Omega is sounding like her actual opponent. So it's the exact opposite. It's not a matter of combat experience. It's a matter of you've probably been alive longer in single individual campaigns than she's been alive in her entire existence. But also then there's Palpatine, who has significant experience. And he's, if Fan is using the interpretation of Palpatine that I think he is, where he's basically self-possessing various Sith Lords in conjunction with the Rule of Two. So it's just passing on Darth Bane over and over and over again and just collecting everyone as pickup souls, essentially. At least that's, I think, the interpretation he's going with, which is closer to canon, but then it's just, it's weird. Disney's lore is weird. It's not actually part of the bad stuff. It's just weird. So he might actually have more experience, but I don't think this is the experience he would use. Depending on who's more in control, it looks more like Omega, but if Palpatine puts in, he has way more experience, but it might not be useful. She could be right and wrong. But if Omega actually is better, she definitely has more experience.
Her many
By a lot.
wars had forged her into what she was now. Her largest impairment here was how little she knew about this Galactic Republic's tactics. In their first engagement, half the enemy fleet had charged, a quarter had scattered, and another quarter had remained frozen in place.
Yep.
A hesitance born of indecision, she suspected. But she
Mixed orders
also
and Palpatine
suspected
fucking
that she
around.
would not face the same incompetence in this theater. The approaching
Maybe.
fleet was undeniably coordinated and was now working to intelligently mitigate their previously exploited weaknesses. This time, she was not facing off against a confused and divided force. This time, the Republic had a plan.
Did the Force
The
have
key
a
now
commander
was
the
to
first time?
recognize it and pull it apart. Gradually, yet not too slowly, an engagement scenario began to form in her mind.
Oh?
Her Mechanicus implants helping her to calculate the most precise angles of attack to accomplish the first bladed thrust of this star dance,
How
which
are
had
they gonna treat
only
this?
barely begun. Split the fleet into 9 battle groups. Ensure each group has a battleship or cruiser with a proper array of deep-ranged batteries or armaments. She began to command, sitting back upon her immense throne.
Ooh, so Fan is actually going into the details of the combat. Noise. Also, one of the things I love is that I can actually see a tactic he's going with. It almost looks like what he's doing is taking the big guns, giving them cover, but also keeping them far enough apart that if for some reason the enemy has a "fuck you" in this specific location weapon, they don't lose everything in big immediately. Not a bad idea. Although they don't have any reason to believe they have that yet. And I don't think the Star Wars side does have anything like that yet.
Saber sitting
That they would
across
have
her
access
lap
to.
as the fingers of her left hand began typing her calculations into the console mounted into the armrest. I am sending precise positions for each one. They are to arrive and wait until the hostile fleet crosses into far range, and then begin synchronized firing patterns, engaging with appropriate force as the enemy fleet draws closer. They are to hold nothing back. Rolla ordered, the crew moving even as she spoke, accomplishing as much as they could, knowing time was of the essence. Lastly,
Really?
instruct all fleet admirals and captains.
Wait, time is... Oh, so Fan is moving with them going really fast. Okay. Again, I mentioned how certain people deal with speeds in 40K at weird ways. They are depicted as anywhere from instantaneous Star Trek levels of speed down to almost realistic. It will take you days to travel across a solar system levels of speed. And you could calculate a entire section of a story based on how many hours they say they're in pursuit between a couple planets, which is still really fast, but in terms of sci-fi, really slow. So if time is of the essence, I can't speak today, essence here, then Fan is definitely on the faster side of speed. I wasn't sure how he would represent that. It's kind of cool, though. I mean, in terms of hard numbers, technically, I think Star Wars would be faster because it's more magic than anything. Granted, so is 40K, so it's really just down to the author regardless.
Captains, that as the enemy approaches mid-range where I've designated, they are to begin to fall back while facing the enemy and continuing to engage. They should angle to arrive at these fallback coordinates simultaneously, which will allow us to meet the bulk of their surviving fleet as a single, unified force.
And that's why they were talking about on Omega's side about going here and here. Because she's assuming they're going to break up and then reconfirm to fight the fleet they see, so there's probably a backup fleet coming around. And it's a classic pincer. Not a bad option.
We'll sink our claws into them and then slowly slit them open. The Emperor will not find us wanting. With those
Might find you
words
dead.
spoken, the commands went out.
But
The
I
vast,
still
yet limited
assume they're
Imperial
gonna
battle fleet
win,
beginning
though.
to part and
Only because of
separate as they
the
were
giant
bid.
Murphy
All
hint.
the while, the silver nebula that was the massive Republic fleet churned and sorted itself, approaching from behind the shelter of comets, asteroids, and planets, all moving by the hand of the Dark Lord's latest prize. Soon, the stalwart pillars of Imperial power would be pressed against the bladed mind Palpatine had purchased. The old would now face the young. Experience would test genius. Wrath would be tempted by play. And sordid sin would face cruel innocence. And the distant gods would laugh.
Oh, Fan's being poetic to describe both sides of the fight, and he does that right before he switches out of the scene. Fan, are you literally about to do all this build up and jump off? I don't want to check. I don't want to check. I might find something I don't want.
All the while.
Wait, did he say wait?
And sordid sin would face cruel innocence.
Yeah, what was that last part?
And the distant gods would laugh all the while. Their hungering voices expressed in the gathering rage, the stirring of ambition, the knowledge of death, and the anticipation of the great atrocities, both
Oh, and not only is he hinting at the Chaos Gods laughing, but they're distant, so they're not here. But also, he then just goes right in there and outlines Korn, Tzeentch, Nurgle, and Slaanesh. So, yeah, they're aware of what's going on, and they're having fun with it.
Shrieking from the near past and rearing from the coming future, which were yet to be. The final moments of the drama at Axum were about to commence.
Orion, Fantris, and Captain Tex.
Are you sure, Master?
Asked Aurelian Tex, the company captain looking dubiously from the face of his lord to the silver engraved tablet the chapter master held delicately between the ceramite fingers of his Terminator armor. Am I sure of what, Captain Tex? The man asked, Orion's golden eyes fixed forward, staring into the blast shields which protected his bridge from the warp and its possible predations. Davik Thune was content to ride naked in the warp, trusting in his faith to provide protection. But Orion insisted on following the book on this, even if a part of him did ache with curiosity. He had received reports of the strange happenings on Davik's vessels when they went into the warp without even their Geller fields.
Wait.
And
Strange happenings on the ships? Was that mentioned before?
Davik's vessels. He had received reports of the strange of him, but Orion insisted on following the book on this, even if a part of him did ache with curiosity. He had received reports of the strange happenings on Davik's vessels when they went into the warp without even their Geller fields.
Huh. You know, I actually completely forgot about that. That is distinct, because at first, when it was mentioned, I'm pretty sure I remember thinking, well, it's the Star Wars side. That's fine. They're going to be fine. Because there are no warp demons on the Star Wars side, because it's a clean universe. And for the most part, that is true. It's why they can travel everywhere. And the Crimson Razors could go wherever they wanted. There's no downside. It makes warp travel so much safer and faster and really damn overpowering. Like, more than every other advantage, that one right there is a massive game changer. If you took out to speed, they'd still be a really powerful force, but the Star Wars side could probably get around them faster. Because in general, taking a week to travel somewhere in Star Wars is considered a long time, where taking a century to travel somewhere in 40K is within expectations, sometimes depending on where it's at and how far away it is and what the other conditions are. And a few people are saying it's Force Ghosts they saw. But is it just Force Ghosts? Because as far as I know, this is the first mention of it. Force Ghosts are the easy one, I would guess, but did they see anything else? Because we have confirmed there are native demons within the Star Wars side based on the possessed clones that we had a few episodes ago. I wasn't thinking that any of the Razors might be possessed, but there is a very good chance of Chaos Astartes being created from the Crimson Razors, who are not far gone from that already, honestly. If nothing changed, you couldn't tell the difference. That is actually probably the most disturbing part. You would not be able to tell the difference until they decide to stab someone in the back. And if it's bad enough, that might not even matter.
And, most notably, how imminently survivable it had been thus far. But no matter how curious he was, it was a bridge too far. Perhaps several.
About doing this, sir. This whole mission is predicated on the Circle of Vigilance. To call them a questionable source is an understatement.
Oh.
And that's even before factoring in their general vagueness and cryptic nature.
Aurelian said, his tone stubborn almost.
Wait, his name was Aurelian. How was that? It's a little different. It's a little different from Aurelian. But that's a lot closer to Lorgar than I thought anyone would actually choose a name for. Although I think that was a title, so maybe it's fine.
Insubordinate. In response, Orion looked back down at the silver tablet in his hand and read from it. On Crimson Hand, the die is cast, and chaos is the dice.
Crimson
Its
Hand.
number is 3 from 6, and it repeats 3 times. The gate is opening, and chaos is the night beyond.
3 from 6. So either 9 or 3. 3 times repeating. 9. Isn't 9 Zeech's number? Because they had the secret psychers that were all dressed up with quotes from Magnus's chapter. Oh, so he's very much going up front about that. He's making a reference to their forebearer Primarch, a chicken.
Times. The gate is opening, and chaos is the night beyond, endless in its own shadow. Only the heirs of knowledge can bar the gate and stem the flow of daemonry.
Yeah.
And only by Imperium wrought may they find the gate and stem it. The path ahead is golden as the throne, blue
This
as
makes a
the
lot more
desert
sense.
sky, and bladed to all who touch it, but it must be trodden. The first step has been taken, and it has fallen at the Azure Gate. The second step must now land
wonder what
upon
he's
the
quoting
heart
from.
of the universe, and with great force it shall be struck. By striking the heart, the wound shall be readied, and from it shall rise the cause of the Empire. Seek then, O Master Shepherd, the heart of the universe. Strike deep, strike true, and be wary of your greedy mercies. The heart can be captured, but it cannot be held. Any who attempt it will be destroyed with great force by the gilded hand of fate, which is cruel and kind and black as the night. It reaches out even now, tall and growing, born.
I thought he was quoting from something, but it almost sounds like Fan is using this as a quote to go full in on this. I might be mistaken, though. Like, he's very much going for poetic language, which is really fucking hard to do, man. Poetry is hard to write. Like, dialogue is one thing, but getting this level of flavor text, I don't envy you having to write that, man. That is well beyond my skill level. Flowing words, I can't do. I can do straight, just the facts, ma'am. This is well beyond my ability.
Born on 2 shadows. By its permission does the Emperor rise.
It does
So
sound like a
say
poem.
we, Council of Vigilance, our vigil ever in the warp, 18 eyes made one, eternally at your service, and at the service of the
18 eyes?
Imperium. Aurelian's stance betrayed what his helmet hid from plain view.
Shock.
I take it
Abhorrence?
that was not clear enough for you. The chapter master said with the slightest quirk in his lips.
Not by a long shot, sir.
Captain Tex confirmed. Then it is a good thing that you do not need to understand, only to be ready. I have depended upon the cryptic intelligence of the Council before. Every
It's a
word
council?
they speak is a riddle, and every riddle has an answer. I found that answering those riddles is often easier than it first appears, at least with the proper context. And with each answer, something invaluable is gained. Orion explained to the young captain.
So then, have you solved this riddle, Master? Is that why you deployed the sector and chapter fleets?
Aurelian asked. Orion nodded his large head.
And the heart of the universe, this thing we are supposed to destroy, it's at Axum?
The captain went on. This time, Orion shook his head. No, Captain. The heart is not at Axum.
Fan, what are you doing? At the heart of the universe in the Star Wars galaxy are black holes, which are weird because they don't act like normal black holes. But that's not really a huge issue because they're treated more like prisons. And then there's the Maw cluster, which I have no idea the location of. I thought it was in the middle of the galaxy, but I could be mistaken. But the only person I know that would be stuck in a black hole would be a certain may or may not be a god in this setting. Are we going Abeloth on this thing? Huh. I don't actually know what's in the deepest part of the core. If it's actually the center is what they're talking about.
Davik Thune took
No,
the
I don't think
first
Abeloth's
step
in
on
the
our
center.
path
I think they're in the core.
within the Axum system.
Maws at the edge?
But
Okay, there's that
we
shaking.
shall
Good.
take the second step.
Unless you meant something else.
And as with any second step, it must take us further. All the way to the heart of the universe. All the way to the core.
Why are they referring to it as the universe when it's actually the galaxy? Omega. That's how they spell their name? Oh, okay, sure. And Oracle team.
Interesting. They divided themselves up into 9 fleet groupings. That's 3 more than I had hoped they would. Said Omega, standing within the globe of
More than they hoped?
holographic tactical
Did they want less or
displays,
more?
the enemy highlighted in red, the Axum system painted in 3-dimensional detail all around her. But they're still angling into the predicted places, even with only 6 of those new smaller
And here comes the
fleets.
pincer.
That should be enough, right? What do you think, 1224? She asked, directing the question to the clone working from the tactical station embedded in the wall to her upper right. He did not look up, hands tapping and clicking, but he answered quickly nonetheless. As long as we keep it smooth and in sync, it shouldn't be too much of a problem. We will have to reposition our main fleet quickly, though. There will be no room for delays if we still want to keep more than the primary elements in fleets Beta through Zeta, he advised. Well, it's too late to turn back now anyway. Let's do it, Omega said, cracking and shaking out her fingers before snapping them with 2 clicks, bringing the display to direct command attention. Alpha Fleet, begin withdrawal. Fleets Beta, Gamma, Delta, Epsilon, and Zeta move to assault positions and prepare for hyperspace jumps, she said, moving her hands to send the relevant coordinates to the proper fleets.
Okay, so these are probably the people they're giving directions to that are still outside the combat area. So they're jumping in behind them, most likely. Unless they're planning to do hyperspace jumps within the system. I mean, Star Wars has got to the point now where that's a thing they do in the much later versions, but... Huh.
In response to her thoughts, the data and interface presently before her, as well as her
Like the art
sweeping,
he chose.
directing
Good
fingers,
choice, Van.
billions of tons of spaceborne steel began to move, tilt, and reorient. The primary in-system fleet pulled itself to a halt about 1,000 meters short of the predicted distance engagement range of the Imperial ships, and began to turn. Begin Operation Axum Omega, now!
Intermission. Oh, Fan, if you're still in the chat, just know that I absolutely hate the transition you're using because it's going in backwards by the word, and everything about this is causing me pain. Thanks. Successor chapters, and if so, would the newly formed council be willing to do that? Ooh. I mean, technically, if you survive long enough, the answer is always yes to the first part, but... Ooh. What do we got here? The chapters indeed have their gene seed vaults fully intact. Oh. So it's not just that they have enough Marines to start restoring. They have the vaults. I was under the assumption that because they were making a desperate escape from the Tyranids, that they would have been more, desperate. And they got not everything because Tyranids coming usually is a good way to GTFO as fast as you can. But no, they had time to get everything out, and that would be Gene Seed first, I guess. which are present have the ability to create new Marines provided they can find recruits. This is not the case for the other Space Marines who are not present at chapter strength. Okay, so we won't get Salamanders, we won't get Space Wolves because they're not there at chapter strength. But the Razors and the Team Red and Team Blue probably can. And regular Grievous, Legends Grievous, with his brutality and cunning that can make an Orc war boss question himself. I mean, in combat, direct, one-on-one, I would doubt it. But if Fan doesn't say something along the lines of, in sheer absurd levels of, how the fuck did that happen? I would put it on Kane, but only because joke characters, man, who are actually competent. 0. Oh, 100,000. I thought there was an O to it for a second. I was like, wait, the O and the 0 are the same in this font. To that average, I have used a similar methodology for many Republic numbers. Yeah, because one of the aftertalks he talked about how it was just so much more. They're just much too small. Hope you got a drink and a snack. Remember to please the algorithm, gods with a like, comment, or even subscription. Check out my other playlist for other stories. Oh, he has other stories? I've only ever read this one, so I don't actually know. Mostly because every time I just Google his name is to click on this stuff as quick as possible to get back here. All right, you ready? Let the canoe. Operation Omega. Actually, speaking of a drink. Good old not sleep juice. Lord Admiral Rolla. Oh, that's a name. And the price of dignity. It's probably the ship name.
40 seconds until the Republic fleet
Almost forgot.
reaches the outermost
There we go.
engagement range. All applicable weapons are aimed and ready to fire, reported the thickly set weapons officer, who turned and added a brisk salute with his words. Rolla nodded absently at him, her eyes trained on the updating hololithic display which was being presented before her command throne. The Republic vessels were advancing from a very specific approach, but in spite of that, it had taken her only seconds to calculate the best angles to move her battle groups to in order to catch the incoming Republic ships in what would become a lethal crossfire. Everything was going as she had predicted.
Oh, they're about to find out that they're the ones in the crossfire by the lady talking about how it's going according to plan because the other side's in the crossfire. We're going to do to them. Wait, they're doing it to us now. This is literally going to be in a case of the meme. Everything is, I'm a brilliant genius. Oh, wait, what hell happened? There's actually so many memes that fall into what I just said. I'm actually not sure which one I'm talking about. Huh.
At least so far. So why did something feel off? Why did she have the sense that something was missing? Something which should have been in plain sight. From where was her unease coming from? Was there a hidden danger right before her eyes? Perhaps a traitor in their midst? She looked away from the floating displays of holographic
Why would she assume a
green
traitor?
light, eyes cutting across the deck,
Natural
moving over
thought
the backs,
process, so she-
shoulders, and faces of her bridge crew. She swung across from the floor eyes. He's coming from something which should have been in plain sight. From where was her unease coming from?
Oh, so either really good intuition or this lady's slightly force attuned because she has plot sense.
In their
Nice.
midst, she looked away from the floating displays of holographic green light, eyes cutting across the deck, moving over the backs, shoulders, and faces of her bridge crew. She sought viciously for anyone who was not meant to be there, for any break in normality or otherwise suspicious behavior. Rolla scanned once, then twice, and on the third time realized that there was nothing there to see. 30 seconds to range! The weapons officer called out, now facing his station and looking down into it intently. The bridge space was an ordered, if dark, cavern of steel, adamantium, and
Interesting
ancient
choice of armor for
technology.
Cubic.
Her various officers sat or stood at their stations, most augmented in
begins.
some way, either to patch an injury sustained in their long careers, or to increase the capacity they had come to rely upon. She did not keep servitors on her bridge, and so none were present, though a couple of tech priests whom she trusted did man 2 of the stations. Their metal bodies
Wait. I thought almost all of their computers were based around some level of servitor processing. Can they actually have a functioning ship without servitors around? I guess there's just a lot more straight up tech than usual.
Swarming with titanium tentacles, which at times seemed to fuse the men into their alcoves.
Probably
The crew
intentional.
was right where they were meant to be. The price of dignity. Her Oberon-class Imperial battleship was in position. All the vessels of her battle group were. Everything seemed to be going smoothly.
But she still
the ship
has that
around her
feeling in
even
the back of
appearing
her
to
head.
strain less under the constant weight of its ancient age. She could barely hear the whir of the battleship's corrective thrusters. In fact, she could not hear them at all. Engine check! What are the conditions of our maneuvering thrusters? She snapped out. Checking systems. The man who passed for the chief engineering officer called out, red robes rippling with extra limbs. The tech priest was executing his diagnostic even before he spoke the words, having anticipated the completion of Rola's command halfway through her issuing it. In mere moments, his various mechadendrites had begun going to work, interfacing with the complex station he was manning. The tech priest's
When is
flesh
she
and
gonna
blood
see it?
eyes twitched and vibrated as tens of data streams filled the dozen or so screens which curved around him, absorbing the presented information as it passed. His bony, withered hands tapped and clicked in a rapid frenzy all the while. 20 seconds! Came the call from the weapons officer. All systems are nominal, Lord Admiral. The tech priest reported a moment later.
Is she gonna do
ceasing
something
his
stupid
movement,
before
the
she has
data streams
confirmation of her
frozen,
hunch?
Having surrendered the knowledge he sought. Then why can I not hear them? How are we holding in a stable firing position?
Hear them? What?
Then why can I not hear them? How are we holding in a stable firing position without the thrusters? Rolla shot back. Several officers on the bridge began to sort through their data for answers, their instincts and habits.
Oh, so so when she says hear them, she means the thrusters because they're not correcting. So that means the enemy is waiting for them to come to them. So her instinct is we are not actively trying to get a firing solution. We just have one easily. So if it's too easy, then that means something's wrong. And that's what she's picking up on. So her hunch is actually based on that. So maybe not force sense due to plot reasons. Instead, it's this seems too easy, but I don't understand why it's too easy. Okay.
It's honed to never doubt the questions or methods of the Lord Admiral herself. My lord, I found it. Our fleet grouping has entered into a Lagrange point. The gravitational stability of this area of space is enabling us to maintain our position with minimal adjustment from the maneuvering thrusters.
Which means you're also in a
Came
very
reply
interesting
from
place.
the navigations officer.
That's a very
Was
specific place.
that not your intention? She added a moment later. No, this was just the optimal... Rolla stuttered for a moment, the information catching her completely off guard. The enemy, who had occupied this system for thousands of years, may well know where to find those kinds of locations.
Yeah. I mean, for example, we know where to find the Lagrange points around Earth because, I mean, we don't have as much there, but we know where they're at. They're actually quite a bit out because they're very much based on where gravity works. You can figure that out if you know exactly how strong gravity is, how it affects other planets around it, or you just don't get near Jupiter and because it tears things up. The asteroid belt, for example. So what they're describing here is her realization of, they gave us the equivalent of the space high ground. You don't do that unless you're fucking someone over with a trap. And she's about to say, ooh, are we going to get the Imperium saying it's a trap? I would not expect that, but that would be awesome if we did.
But her fleet having just arrived would have taken hours of stellar observation, perhaps days or even weeks, to accurately predict where any but the most stable of such points would exist. Overall, it was a good thing. Firing from a Lagrange point allowed for optimal stability at minimal systems effort, and it would enable her ships to leave the system at will.
But it also means they know exactly where you're going to be because it's the best
10
place to be.
seconds. Weapons beginning final priming. Cycling is set. Continued the weapons officer from his standing post. Rolla felt the instinct to sweat prickle across her artificial skin, sensing
Artificial
that
skin?
familiar chill which foretold disaster.
Huh.
She had taken this position with her ships because it was an optimal firing angle,
But predictable
not because
because
she was
of that.
aware of the Lagrange point being present. Her half-mechanical mind had given her the most logical locations to attack from to maximize the range and accuracy of her vessels, while moving them a minimal distance from where they had begun. Falling into a place of relative gravitational stability was just a happy accident. Or was it?
Nope.
Fleet Vox, send an information request out immediately, the Lord Admiral ordered.
If you're
I
in the
am.
best place,
Orders.
and you go to the best place,
Confirmed the
that means
comms
the enemy
officer.
knows exactly where you're going to
They
be in
are to
advance.
report the presence of any similar Lagrange points in or around their positions, and they are to do so as soon as humanly possible. I have a bad feeling about this.
Ah, they're
She
quoting
said,
Obi-Wan
watching as the
instead.
message was relayed electronically. Engaging enemy in 3, 2,
Wait for it.
hold fire! The Republic fleet is slowing to a stop! The weapons officer reported. Confirmed! High-intensity auger scans are showing uniform firing of retro thrusters across the entire fleet.
Retro thrusters?
Detected coordination.
Oh, they're
with
actually slamming the
based on
brakes.
The action is near 98%. The Republic ships have halted 23 meters short of the combat zone. In spite
Okay, seriously? I mean, on the one hand, yeah, they're short of the combat zone. On the other hand, 23 meters in space means legitimately nothing. When miles and kilometers are considered too close to really be useful, meters don't matter. Admittedly, they should already be in the, well, we're not exactly accurate, but it's close enough that we could say fuck it and do it anyways level. Sorry, this is me just being a dick when it comes to space combat. It doesn't matter for the story. Just I almost wish it said kilometers instead, because that would be a bigger number and sound a little less exacting to stop firing.
of those reports, the ship around them still rocked, several of their primed weapons going off nonetheless.
Yeah?
It was an act which was repeated across the various Imperial battle groups.
Honestly, this makes
the
no sense
enemy
not
having
to
stopped
fire.
so close to the battle line that several Imperial captains had failed to forestall their crews quickly enough. The sporadic
close enough, it wouldn't
spray
matter.
was mostly ineffective, with
Why?
only 1 or 2 positive strikes with the lances and a handful of
Or is it one of those things where the Lances have a definitive cutoff point? That might actually be the case for all I know, because weird interactions with Imperium tech where it is exactly this for reasons they don't understand, which is legitimately a reason things work that way in the Imperium side. Yeah. Also, Xenodragon, do I have somewhere I need to go? Nope, I actually have this entire time to myself. It's more a test of, can I do this? So far, the answer is yes. This is the longest video I've recorded in half a month because of being sick. It was a nice test, and so far it looks like I'm actually making it. Nice.
about 7 vessels being destroyed by one of the 3 Nova cannons which had fired. Thankfully, that stuttering first volley was not followed by a second, as the Imperial guns held, waiting for the Republic to continue its advance. Instead, it began to do the opposite. Enemy vessels are reorienting. They're vanishing, came the report from one of the sensor's operators. By the throne, they're retreating. All of their ships are turning around and departing the system. Lord Admiral, they are fleeing rather than face us, said the officer, to the obvious joy and then cheers of most of the bridge
They're
crew,
reorienting.
but not Lord Admiral Rolla.
Are they going to
Admiral,
jump away then
information
jump back
reports are
faster?
back, called the communications officer. 5 of our battle groups, not including ourselves, are currently situated in or near in-system Lagrange points. 4 of these are of an unstable nature but appear cohesive at this time.
So they can
He
plan
said,
ahead where they're going to
The
hit.
words were like ice on the Lord Admiral's thoughts. What were the chances
Sitting
of
ducks?
that being a coincidence?
None.
Had she subconsciously sent them to those positions somehow? No.
You were being
She
baited.
had no control over the overlap between those points and the optimal firing angles to combat the Republic vessels. The only things which would control that were the positions of the stellar objects in the system and the chosen approach of the enemy fleet itself. A fleet which was retreating after coming to a halt just outside of their combat range.
And honestly, the fact that they haven't figured out it's a trap. I mean, subconsciously, you could tell she's very much aware of it already. But I absolutely just love this because it's very much basically playing out the, okay, so we're in the exact best possible way. It just happens to line up to a very stable space where it's very easy to get a shot from. And as soon as we're in that position, the enemy stops and moves away. The alternative to that is they are in a very stable part of space where a lot of people in advance, due to having had access to this system and all of its star maps and charts and gravitational anomalies for centuries and millennia, would know exactly where the firing solution is when they jump in. So they could just plug it in advance. Because as long as you find out where you're shooting from, you already know the very accurate location the enemy is going to be. There's a lot less calculations there. So they've arranged the Imperium into essentially the equivalent of, I guess, bottle cans on top of a wall. Yeah. Oh, God.
Damn it! We've fallen into a trap! She spat,
and she
standing
figured
up
it out.
and sweeping her arm out angrily. Order all battle groups to fall back to the...
Too
Rolla
late.
began to order before suddenly and without warning,
How fast can
there was
Imperial
an
ships
odd
turn?
sound like a deep thrum or buzz.
Why would they hear that?
Then, the previously starry black view of space which had dominated the viewports of her bridge was consumed by the instantaneous appearance of an enormous mottled gray hull. Deep trenches lined with turrets formed the complex texture of the monstrous vessel, which...
Oh, dude! A proto superstar destroyer. Fuck yeah, man. Oh, sorry, I'm geeking out so hard right now. Also, Burb, you said something about playing Helldivers sometime? I'd love to, but I just need to get around to it, and honestly, I just keep putting it off. That's on me. I want to. It was fun the 5 minutes I could play.
which had appeared before them, and massive red symbols lined in golden coloring were
How close
written
are they?
across the silver skin. For a dreaded instant, there was no action, only an eternity of horrid, suspended anticipation.
Yup.
Then, the instant died as the hull before the ship came alive with flashes of blue and green.
All the guns.
Turbo laser turrets mounted across the Republic battleship, turning and orienting to spray thick torrents of light from their many enormous emplacements.
Sorry, I am geeking out right now. This is just... And apparently, Hobbit is saying this is the Mandator SSD, and Ripoff clarified it was the Mandator 2 SSD, the Super Star Destroyer. Okay. Dude. And yeah, Kubik, yeah, sound does travel in the Star Wars universe, and I know some people theorize that they're actually traveling through an ether in the Star Wars side, as opposed to an actual vacuum, because of, admittedly, they model all flights of spacecraft as if they're winged aircraft. So yeah, that's just, it was designed before people knew how to fly in space, because it would not look like it does as depicted in Star Wars. But also, most people don't know how to fly in space, so no one knew to question that until much later. But frankly, I'm just going here going, this is cool! And that's really all I care about.
The price of dignity trembled and shook all around Rolla, sparks flying from overburdened conduits.
I just got why that name is a joke. The price of dignity, being the upper, more impossible person. This ship is going to get fucked. Because that's the only way this joke works.
As the shields began to rapidly
Die with
compensate
their
for
dignity.
the sudden burden being slammed upon them. Report! What is happening? Admiral Rolla bellowed, keeping her feet in spite of the bucking deck. The sensors operator screamed as his console released a torrent of roasting electricity, his still
Ooh.
writhing body hauled out of the way by the man beside him. That same man replaced the now former officer, who lay trembling and waiting on the ground for the Medicaid workers.
Oh, he's not
who
dead.
Soon entered
Wow.
the bridge and pulled him out. The new sensors operator stuttered for a moment as he stared down into the smarking, recovering instrumentation, before clearing his throat to report what he
Interesting
saw.
choice of music.
Enemy fleet
really
groupings
sure
have
what it
emerged
is.
all across the system. By the throne, they've poured it in. right on top of us.
Yep.
Of course.
Now you're fighting range.
Rolla finished
Because that's
for
where
him.
their guns are more effective.
Which battle groups are not currently engaged?
None.
She demanded. Battle groups 3,
Oh,
9,
some actually got
and
out.
6 are currently still in position and unaffected by the enemy ambush. By the burning
Because it was
road,
more than
Lord
Omega
Admiral,
planned.
That Republic battleship in front of us is 8 kilometers long. It's as large as the Dignity and almost twice as wide. The officer answered.
Yeah, because SSDs could get really
I can see
wide.
that. Are there any more like it? Rolla shot back. Yes, 3 more like it. All with those Republic glyphs written across them. They're all in different parts of the ambush, so this is the only one we are currently facing. The man said. Good. Get an autotrans working on those glyphs. I want to know what they say, if they say anything at all. Order fleets 3, 6, and 9 to converge and liberate fleets 8, 7, 5, 4, 2, and 1 in that order. They will gather
Nope.
strength as they go. Leave no
Trying to
Republic ship
reconsolidate.
standing and tell them to make haste. That main fleet may have retreated for now, but it's only a matter of time before they circle around and come back to finish us from
Yeah,
a different
accurate.
approach. We must be ready. The
wonder
Lord
what the next
Admiral
one would
of
be.
Battle Fleet Zektek ordered. Orders a
Okay, this is actually a question for Fan if he's still in the chat. What is the name Zektek resembling? Or, like, is it just a random name you pulled out? Or is there a reference for that I'm just missing? I don't know, and honestly, I'm kind of curious. And Afton, will there be a Star Rail stream this week? Maybe. The stream's going pretty well, so I might try it, but we'll see how I feel. If there's like a relapse of me feeling like shit, I probably won't. I'd like to do it, though. That'd be fun.
sent. But Lord Admiral, we are Battle Group 1. Why are we being rescued last? The comms officer dared to ask.
Because you got the biggest
Rolla
ship on you
turned
already.
Towards him, her face contorted into a predator's
It's the
bristling
Dignity.
grin. She whipped out her naval saber, kicking the sheath from the blade and allowing the finely honed sword to glare with reflected green light as she scythed it through the hololith before her. Her nearly crazed expression bore luminous markings created by the reflecting broken emerald light as she aimed the saber towards the gray hull which blocked her view.
She's insane.
Because the other battle groups do not have my ship to defend themselves with. The enemy may be vast, but their vastness is nothing compared to the teeth of my Emperor's Oberon.
Let me get this straight. So when asked why they're not having other people save them, she brings out a sword, destroys part of her own bridge for flair because it's in the way of her dramatic posturing, and then says, "This is my ship." Oh my God. This is very much a theater kid from the 40K side, because that level of drama right there would make actually probably a really good usage in the Emperor's Children before they went chaotic. Yeah, that's really all the damning con man I need right there. That is just, it's a meme, man. It is a meme.
Tell the astropaths to stop their singing and begin their screaming. Scramble all wings of bombers and fighters. All assets are now at war. Hold nothing back. She proclaimed. From choir and navigator to cannon and prow, spare them nothing.
So at the first time she's challenged, her entire tactics devolved into fire everything. So literally she's confronting tactics with no tactics. Push the big red button is her entire plan right now. Wow. I mean, if the gun is big enough, that works, but this lady's an idiot.
By the time our rescue comes,
Rule of cool?
we
Oh,
will have
yeah.
ensured that we do not need it.
Doubt it.
To battle!
Yeah, your
Warriors
dignity
of
is
the
completely
Emperor!
broken here.
To war! Their Lord Admiral commanded, her crew saluting and shouting obeisance to her will, and getting to work. Ma'am, the autotrans is back, the communications officer reported. And what does it say? She asked, still standing, eyes fixed on the vessel before her. It reads, the Pride of the Corps. It appears to be the name of the ship. Roll.
I'm curious how they spelled that. Oh, the core. Well, that's an interesting choice. Because they were talking about the prophecy about going to the core. And I was initially assuming something in the core of the galaxy where there's a bunch of bullshit. Because black holes are more just random things rather than actual black holes in Star Wars. But I'm wondering if it's actually a reference to the ship now, because it's coming out in the same episode after coming back to this from a previous outtake with a different character. And it's with a distinct name referencing what they made a point to pull aside. I wonder if I was misreading that. They're not actually talking about location, but the ship itself.
The pride of the core. It appears to be the name of the
Might
ship.
be a little too specific, though.
Rolla allowed her disturbing grin to widen into a frenzied smile. The
She's
enemy
insane.
sent their pride against her, sought to smother her under cunning, numbers, and their newly revealed weapons. The fools failed to realize that the Grox fights twice as hard when its back is against the wall.
But doesn't the
and
Grok still die?
thrice as hard when openly challenged. And she was far more lethal than a Grox. Then let us see if their pride can overcome the price of dignity. They will regret closing this distance with us. But they will not feel their regret or anything else for much longer. Fire the engines! Brace the crew! Give
Ramming?
me ramming speed!
Called it! Kuat of Kuat. Oh, yeah, because it's a title and also an obligatory name you take if you're in charge of the Kuat shipyards. I know this is a Star Wars thing. I'm aware this is a Star Wars thing. I just think it's a stupid Star Wars thing. Someone just didn't come up with a good name at the time, and they just ran with it.
Kuat of Kuat watched the proceedings from his command chair in the center of the bridge. His eyes narrowed in cold affirmation of what he had already known all along.
Oh, he's running the ship.
Kuat was supreme, and when its engineering might was fully brought to bear, even the petty constraints of the Ruusan Reformation could not hold them back.
You know what? I thought she was the idiot. And I just realized, no, this guy's even more of an idiot. They're having an idiot off. Why? I mean, she's going all out on, ha ha ha, no one can challenge me. I am invincible. But then this guy's going, no, I am invincible. If this doesn't end with a mutual KO, I will be very surprised. Because these two already, just 5 seconds in, and I mean, he's the Kuat of Kuat. He's basically the character who is made to exemplify arrogance that's unearned. Although it is moderately earned, considering they do run one of the major powers of shipbuilding that does continue after the Republic as well, and after the Imperium.
His family, his firm, and his very planet were every bit as dominant as the names he took to be his own.
Doubt.
His loyal feelings
You
purred in his
survive.
lap, blissfully unaware of the carnage raging all around them. His fleet was 4 times the size of that which was presented by the Imperial interlopers, and was led by his own Mandator II dreadnought, the pride of the Corps. Already, the Imperials were suffering casualties as his fleet followed the instructions given by Palpatine's newest instrument.
Instrument? Wait, what?
Just as predicted, the outsider ships began to fire most...
Oh, he's talking about Omega. And he's being an asshole by not referring to them as a person. They're just a tool. Like the guy who we're now in the head of.
at his own pointedly massive vessel, which drew attention away from his smaller, more fragile ships, which even then were making use of focus fire tactics to whittle down the fanatic vessels.
Not a bad option,
This
but...
was a role the Pride was pointedly designed to excel at.
No, it's
Even
not.
stretching the limits of the law as much as he could, Kuat of Kuat had only been able to arm his enormous ship with so many turbo laser batteries, which left it with an inordinate amount of excess power. Power he had ensured would not go to waste.
So he had redundancies that he's intentionally using for things he think are more valuable. You know, if this was a competent person in charge, if this was a ship being directly micromanaged by Omega, I would think this is doing pretty well. Yeah, this ship is definitely about to get destroyed.
While it was true that the enormous
heading
Mandate
out, Hobbit?
packed far
Right.
more
Thanks for dropping in, Matt.
firepower than any other Republic warship, Its purest strength lay in its shields. Humming
You mean the things that
powerfully,
didn't help at all against the
resonating
Imperium?
throughout the ship, Kuat of Kuat could feel it as surely as he could feel the heartbeat of his beloved pet. The shields on the Pride of the Core were worthy of defending a planet, and the various solid and energy weapons the Imperial vessels sent at his ship were deflected harmlessly into space by the absolute might of his Mandator II class dreadnought.
Oh, yeah, because there's two different types of shielding in Star Wars. There's the kind they had at the Death Star 2, where it blocked physical aspects and lasers because someone crashed into it at speed. And then there's the more planetary ones, which could block things at speed and would actually do a hard light. But then there's also the other shields that are permissible. And actually, it's usually the hard light ones all regardless. If anyone else right now is imagining the scene from Return of the Jedi where the Executor gets T-boned, you're not the only one.
And then he saw something which made his own heart quicken. A breath escaping past his lips, hissing out in sudden, exasperated surprise. The largest vessel in the enemy fleet group which he was engaging had finished orienting itself, shifting and sliding its massive bulk through space on rapidly firing maneuvering thrusters. Yet, instead of doing so in a way which allowed it to rain down with its main broadside-mounted guns, as Kuat of Kuat had expected it would, it had instead aimed its prow directly towards the center of his own beloved warship.
Because there's no real ramming doctrine
to give credence
in
to his
Star Wars. It's always an accident at that
their
point.
flagship's intentions. The mountainous Imperial battleship confirmed them, its engines flaring to life as it made to ram through them from above.
Yep.
Evade that vessel! He called out from his center position.
You have a very big ship.
Unable to comply. Our ship won't be agile enough to achieve the evasion at this distance.
I'm wondering if he's going to do something stupid like trying to do a quick lightspeed jump to get out of the way. He's not a named character, or specifically an important character with a name. He has a title, so it doesn't count. So he's probably going to fail at doing this. If he tries.
The human helmsman reported, full power is being funneled into the shields.
I have no idea what that character is.
Droned the shield operator,
Is that a
brilliant
hat
woman who
or
hailed
hair?
from Arthuria. Her name was Selimi, and she had been no small help in designing the exquisite shield systems which enshrouded their ship.
No.
Though she was a stoic creature, Kuat of Kuat knew well how she relished the chance to test and use her technology personally.
Oh my god,
and
she's
hoped
getting
that
off
her
on having
discipline
someone
would
try to actually
ultimately
kill her.
trump her personal desires. She sat at her special station, manipulating the controls and making the energetic skin around the Pride of the Core flash and flare brightly. Moments later, the wedged prow of the brutal enemy ship collided with the shields,
And?
jarring the entire Mandator and
Wait, it transfers energy through the shield? That's Star Wars logic, because if you crash into someone but it still hits the shields, you just shake inside the ship, which is actually the same thing they do in Star Trek, but I thought that was always just an affect because it looks cool. Because any actual good internal damperers to do that would fail, obviously, but this is just me overanalyzing sci-fi magic, so I should probably just shut up. There's really no method to this other than it looks cool. Rule of
pushing
cool,
it
man.
out
Rule of cool.
formation. The lights flickered and consoles sparked, the visible bubble of protection bending and warping against
They're
the
gonna shoot a
biting,
Astartes to board them?
glowing hull of the Imperial
That actually
vessel.
wouldn't be a bad
Drawing
option if they
power
had
from
any
weapons
Astartes.
to shields. Selimi said,
I mean, they are
a moment
space
later,
marines.
her voice still neutral
Might as well do the marine
and
part.
calm as her hands went about maneuvering her dials and deactivating most of the turbo lasers across the ship. In response, the blue skin around the ship strengthened, and Kuat of Kuat sighed as the Pride of the Core began to stabilize once more, holding
for it.
fast against the brutality of the Outsider's chosen tactics. Barbarians. He scoffed in spite of the small surge of fear their sudden attack had inspired within him.
Yeah, oh my god. As many flags as the other lady raised, this guy he's not waving flags, he's giving printed out signs for where to get him in the dick. with said flag. He's stabbing himself right there. It's like, don't worry, I don't need kids or the ability to pee anymore. I could just die.
The master of the Kuat family knew well the value of brute strength and power, but the way these Imperials wielded it was savage in the extreme.
He's not wrong about them, though.
Still,
It is savage fighting.
Though he would never admit so out loud, he did find certain aspects of their design philosophy to be genuinely interesting, even inspired.
If he survives this fight somehow and it leads into an entire thing of Star Wars ships inspired by 40K, I would kind of love to see how Kubik would make a ship model for that, because that sounds fascinating.
Caliber and variety of weapons the Imperials deployed were outrageously effective, and seeing them perform their deadly tasks in person was almost enough to dispel his loathing towards the man who had forced him to be here.
Oh?
Almost.
Palpatine or someone else?
The thought of the Supreme Chancellor
Palpatine
soured the taste in Kuat of Kuat's mouth instantly.
And if Palpatine forced him to be here, it's probably because Palpatine has something else he wants out of it. Because you don't put a head of state equivalent into a battleship unless you're expecting them to probably be accidentally removed by enemy fire.
At first, the man had seemed like a sure ally, a loyal customer, maybe even a friend. But after 4 years of the Clone Wars and countless instances of nationalization of legitimate private industry, Kuat of Kuat had come to see Palpatine for what he really was.
Really?
The Codger was a blossoming despot, eager to consume and possess everything he could reach, ever watchful for any opportunity he had to take what was not yet his.
I mean, yeah, this guy's completely accurate. That is a very good summation of Palpatine. Like, not even to a little bit, that is completely on. On the other hand, everything else about his entire examination of this entire battle is not nearly as insightful. Yeah.
And this entire battle, Kuat of Kuat knew too well, was just another step in that man's plan for domination. Why else would he have come to the battle himself? Why?
Because Kuat, unless I'm mistaken, do they have an alliance with someone that Palpatine doesn't like? Nah, that might be something I'm misremembering.
Oversee the liberation of Axum personally. The Supreme Chancellor was, yet again, positioning himself to be seen as the hero of the galaxy, the savior of the people. But when he did, he would not be alone. Thus why Kuat of Kuat had agreed to allow his vaunted mandators to be used in this battle.
Plural.
The core was threatened.
How many does he have?
And its liberators would be carried on the backs of vessels made in the images rendered by Kuat Drive yards. When the battle was retold after this, the people of the galaxy would speak the names of the heroes and their ships in hushed and revered voices. And among them would stand Kuat of Kuat and the pride of the core.
So many death flags. Especially because he was given the chance to be insightful and realize exactly who Palpatine is. Honestly, that in its own right is a massive flag right now, because he doesn't seem to have any information that would be able to get out, but he makes a lot of sense as someone who would be killed off right as they realize the person who put them in this situation is just as dangerous as the person who's actually killing them. It's a really good way to show what someone with power, but who came to the realization too late and is still trying to grab it, is at. Also, Ripoff Productions says that... Oh, no, what was it? That I just assume people at the top are incompetent. Yeah, that's actually the problem with the Republic. A lot of the people at the top were incompetent. Intentionally, because people like Palpatine and whatever previous Force incarnations he was prior to that, or other Sith, were taking advantage of it, and there was massive corruption, who's also further emphasizing more corruption, which made more incompetent people at the top. They could be bribed and or put into stupid positions where they couldn't accurately work. The problem with the Republic is that people intentionally incompetent were put up there by competent people who were assholes because they could get what they want easier from incompetent people. The Imperium's a little more There's a lot of really incompetent people at the top, And then there's a lot of really specifically competent people making incompetent decisions competently, which could be most inquisitors who aren't or are important. And the high lords, depending on what's going on. Yeah, you just kind of assume incompetence or a weird mix of it. And Zeo Dragon said, no, it's all the death flags. Yeah, it's all the death flags.
Newly named prosecutor. Without.
I just realized there's red on this ship, so it even is a ship with a red shirt. It's a little bit of a stretch, but it's there.
Warning. A sudden pain drew him from his thoughts.
Oh?
He winced in his chair. Ow! Ow, ow! QB, stop that!
What?
The Lord of Kuat said, trying to shove his feelings out of his lap, the creature suddenly stinging him with its many claws.
Why?
The beast yowled and growled at its master, and, despite his pushing, only sank its claws more deeply into
The
Kuat
cat
of Kuat's
equivalent
ornate
is realizing
uniform,
it's about to die.
drawing blood from the self-titled technician as it slowly, jerkily turned to face him. But what Kuat of Kuat saw when he looked down into the
Palpatine
small,
possessing
furry
it?
face of his erstwhile companion was nothing he recognized.
What?
The creature's mouth frothing and bloody, the whites of its scleras filling with red, its rapidly, asymmetrically blinking eyes appearing rabid and human.
Palpatine is possessing the cat? The fuck?
Screaming in sudden terror, Kuat of Kuat barely managed to intercept his maddened pet just as it leapt for his throat.
Unless something else is.
Swiping the animal out of the air and throwing it away from his central command chair. The creature landed heavily, having none of its traditional balance. Instead,
I wonder if this is something to do with the astropath screaming.
flopping and spasming on the floor, seizing out of control. It was only then that the chosen child of House Kuat noticed the chaos slowly devouring his bridge. One of the command officers froze at his station, his hands hovering still over his controls, twitching his head once before suddenly falling over, completely limp and bleeding from his eyes and nose. Two others, members
It's
of
a
ship
psychic
security,
attack.
folded in the same
I didn't
way,
know astropaths could do
suffering
that.
spontaneous aneurysms.
Huh.
Kuat of Kuat barely understood what
That
was
would imply
happening.
why the entire
Clearly,
astropath
they
singing
were
thing
somehow
mattered.
under attack. He pressed
A
himself
psychic
against
attack,
the back
which they
of
have
his chair,
no
hands
ability for.
fumbling with one of his coat pockets as he produced a pill case, which he flipped open. Inside were
Pill case?
portable medications for radiation poisoning, general airborne toxins and plagues, lethal proteins, and even a vial of antidote for the blue shadow virus. He dislodged most
have
of
an
the
antidote for
pills
that?
into his palm and
Oh,
choked
wow.
them down hastily. Having no idea from what vector this death was coming, but gratified to see he was not the only one surviving it. However, though most of those around him did not die from the effects of whatever it was which had attacked them, that did not mean that death was the only thing they had to fear. 2 more of the 15 remaining console operators fell out of their chairs, not dead or seizing, but laughing and crying uncontrollably, babbling about voices and speaking in a language Kuat had never heard before.
Huh. See, this is actually interesting because between my own assumption that this is probably related to the comment about the astropath screaming and everyone in the chat going about that really long, I didn't realize astropaths would be powerful enough to do that. Send messages, sure, but I thought those were specifically meant for other astropaths to receive. I don't think I've ever seen them used this way. It could just be a fan interpretation of them having psychic power, so it probably would just work as a generalized fuck you, but it's kind of weird. I might be missing information. Maybe we'll get it later.
One of his 3 personal guards, who stood just behind his throne,
I assume
stomped
Palpatine
forward,
because he's done
drawing
bullshit
his
like that
blaster
before with
pistol
Padme.
and brutally executing the 2 laughing men, each shot drawing an involuntary twitch from Kuat of Kuat. But the man did not stop there, pausing for only a moment after he shot the second laughing man before raising his aim and shooting 5 more crewmen who were working at their stations. vacating their skulls of their contents with the superheated plasma of his weapon. He moved to shoot a sixth, but missed, his left hand suddenly reaching out and gripping his right, jerking the shot wide. By then,
Fighting
the other
back.
2 members of his personal security had reacted, blasting the rogue guard with stunning shots. The wide circles zapping and knocking the crazed man unconscious. What is happening? Somebody tell me
Psychic
what
attack.
is happening! Kuat of Kuat demanded in the growing panic which was subsuming not only him,
Damn.
but all the surviving crew on the bridge. Another man jumped to his feet, scrambling in a frenzy and running to the foremost viewport, howling as he ran face first into it, nearly knocking himself unconscious in the process. He staggered up to his feet before slamming his face into the hard transparent steel once, then twice, and then finally he fell to the ground again as he was blasted with several stunning rings. Kuat of Kuat heard a scuffle then and craned his neck to see his 2 remaining personal guards had fallen upon each other, both rolling around on the ground, each trying to stab the other with their drawn vibro knives. They are
General
here
insanity, but it doesn't seem
attacking us,
coordinated.
said Salimi's cool voice. Kuat of Kuat turned to face her, seeing her standing and drawing a blaster pistol from a small holster at her hip. How? The shield! The shield is still... The master of
Not
Kuat
Geller.
pleaded. The shield cannot protect us from this kind of attack. They are too close. Their minds are inside us now. She said, tone unchanged as she fired 3 shots into the back of one of the struggling guards.
Because they're
The man
possessed as well.
convulsed and then went
Oh, so she has enough control of her own body to talk through someone possessing her? That would be weird. Or the person possessing her is just being really fucking weird.
rigid as the guard beneath him finished him off by driving the hypersonic blade he was wielding into the shot guard's heart. Grunting, he shoved the corpse off and rose. Thanks for that, he said to the blue-skinned woman, but she was paying him no mind, kneeling beside the dead guard, her gloved hands moving through the gear on his belt. Salimi, what are you doing? Kuat of Kuat demanded. She
Betrayal?
stood and looked at him, cold, dispassionate, one eye seeming like it always had, the other eye wild, bloodshot, and the wrong color.
Oh.
She raised a grenade she had taken off the guard's belt, finger hooked through the pin. They are inside our minds. I
Time to
need
get them out.
to get them out, she explained, her calm demeanor collapsing as she yanked the pin free, holding the explosive in her hand out in front of herself. Sir, look out! The guard cried, tackling Kuat of Kuat out of his chair and covering his body with his own.
Okay, props to the guard being able to hold up to all of that and still take decisive action. That is impressive. Don't think it'll help, but impressive. Oh. So, Frank, this is something Rogue Trader Navigators could actually do. That's probably why I don't know almost nothing about Rogue Traders, and I've never played the game, so if this is an ability they had, I was completely blindsided by it.
Even so, the resulting blast left the wealthy heir of
Is he a
Planet
dragon-handed bed?
Kuat
All right, let's drop
stunned
again, man.
and reeling.
Why am I looking over here?
He had to pull
Later, man.
himself out from under the weight of his dead guard, coughing
The guards
from the smoke
died,
produced
but
by
the guy
many
underneath
small
survived.
fires which surrounded the blast zone. Several others had been caught in the blast, and the bridge was in complete disarray.
But not
A
destroyed.
quarter of the crew dead or unconscious.
If that was an EMP
Another
grenade,
quarter
it might be
panicking
different.
openly, and the remaining half desperately trying to maintain control of the ship's systems. Someone, an officer of the ship, was trying to pull Kuat of Kuat to his feet, but he had no strength left in his legs, an effect born out of his observation of the shield control station. It lay in ruins, the delicate
Shields off.
instruments and panels rendered into an inoperable, sparking mess by the explosion
They're
which
gonna
had
get rammed
left
again?
Salimi a half-whole corpse smeared across the ground. One of the viewing ports was damaged, a spider web of growing cracks reaching across its surface.
Which blows first,
Before an alarm
the
went
window
off and
or
shutters
the ship itself?
slammed over it before it could cave out into
Oh,
space.
ooh, nice. They have that
More
installed.
alarms sounded as emergency medical crews began to storm into the bridge, some coming to kneel beside him, others blasting the fires around them with cold jets of fire suppressant.
But
they were speaking to him, asking him questions, but the man known as Kuat of Kuat was numb to all that was happening around him. His eyes drifting
Psychic
up
bullshit,
from the
man.
wreckage of the shield control panel to the superheated prow of the enemy dreadnought.
superheated?
Lord Kuat, we must
Oh, so it was probably superheated from contact with the shield. The energy had to go somewhere.
go now! The officer was yelling, but Kuat of Kuat did not heed him, simply watching with listless eyes as the shield wall around the head of the Imperial vessel finally frayed and burst apart.
Wait, what?
Watch vessel finally frayed as the shield wall around the head of the Imperial vessel finally frayed and burst apart.
The fuck? The shield wall burst apart? Is it opening or is it actually taking damage from getting through the shield? Unless it is actually a mutual kill again. Well, yeah, that'd be kind of cool, but what the?
Watching the hand of fate descending mercilessly, something suddenly occurred to Kuat of
Unless
Kuat,
shield wall was a
and he
reference to
found the
his
strength
shield.
to stand, hauling himself up with the help of the nearby officer. But he did not join the man in his futile attempts to escape the inevitable.
Oh?
Instead, he ran back to his command chair, finding one side of it ruined, but the other side, his left side, still being intact enough to work. He began to frenziedly tap out his final systems command, his
Blow up.
lithe, professional fingers speeding as the bridge darkened. The light of the nearby star now entirely obscured by the falling head of the Imperial vessel.
Okay, so the shield wall, the Imperial... Okay, so if I'm understanding what happened, the superheated prow of the ship was getting closer. It was compacting into the shield and becoming superheated. So when the shield wall broke, he meant his ship's shield wall. Okay, that makes a lot more sense. I thought he was referring to the ram on top of the ship as the shield wall, but I wasn't entirely sure. Ah, that makes more sense. Yeah.
He jammed the final sequence key and did
Self-destruct?
not even have enough time for a grim sense of accomplishment. As the bridge and center of the enormous Mandator II was penetrated by the brutal warrior flagship of the fanatic Imperials. His body sucked towards the sudden cracks in the hull before being pulverized into atoms by the impact of the ram.
Damn.
All around them, the Republic task force which had been sent to destroy or delay the Lord Admiral's battle group began to break and scatter as the heart of their smaller fleet was bored into and the back of the Pride was broken on the knee of Imperial savagery.
Savagery so far. They still know that they're about to get flanked, though.
Above Axum, the sky began to burn. But the world itself was roasting in its own right, and it burned too brightly for most to take notice of the sky's blossoming wounds. Forces from all over the planet were converging on the destined field of slaughter, descending like ravens to scavenge carnage from the infernal final stretch which led to the gates of the Basilica of Salvation.
And Fan is taking probably the end of the episode then to pull around and describe the... Wait, he's not just... What specifically to describe about the Basilica?
The infernal final stretch which led to the gates of the Basilica of Salvation.
Yeah?
As the bones
Give us the timeline
and
match.
blood of spaceborne hulks began to ignite, streaking like fell omens across the day sky of Axum, the canoness of the
rain.
Emperor's most faithful girded her ancient body for
Oh?
war. Withered limbs slid into armor.
And he's going through the motions of telling us what's going on. So if she's getting in her armor, this means this is happening after Lazarus came back, before the final assault on the Basilica, if there is a final assault, if it gets that far. I don't really know how close they are.
Frail bones became supported.
Who else is he
by
going to mention? Because I
Sarah.
don't think he'll just stop here.
The sisters of the order bowed as she rose, a
Okay, that's cool
paragon
armor.
in truth and dressed as such. The thick, mechanical limbs of the war suit.
Oh, dude. I wasn't sure if Fan would actually use the Paragon war suits because they're such a newer creation for the Sisters line, is what I would say, but they've been out for almost an entire generation of this entire edition now, so do they don't count as new anymore, do they? Huh. I suddenly feel old. Huh. Still, though.
Suit creaked and came alive. The machine's spirit within marrying itself with her own. One never whole without the other.
Oh.
One of her daughters, Leandra, kneeled directly in her path. Her head bowed low, her arms raised up, and held in her open palms was their sacred treasure. The
gun?
ancient warrior took her old weapon
Called
and raised it high.
Might be melee, though.
The light of the Tabahaiv illuminating
That is
them
a word.
all like the dawn sun.
Power sword?
Sacred sword
Called
in
it.
hand, her daughter now stepping aside. Canoness Ishtara Ordain stepped with mechanical might towards the towering golden gates.
Yeah, she's old enough that her bones are frail. On the other hand, freaking power armor, man. Who needs physical strength when you got all the mech might?
Those enormous,
Ugh.
elaborate constructs, which had weathered every attack, every single volley of fell artillery fire, cracked and swung open at her approach, as if even that bulwark could not stand to lie in her path.
The suits are so
The
stupid, I
burning,
absolutely love them for it.
Screaming battlefield greeted her and her fellow brides of the Emperor. Without fanfare or words, the sacred matron stepped beyond the threshold. Her entire order of faithful warriors following in her wake. And then, something more, heralded by a titan's roar.
Pulling in the fact that the knight is finally coming into combat, as opposed to just walking over wherever Lazarus was.
Some
Oh.
sisters stunned to look.
God
others
damn you,
even
Fan.
dove
You're just
for cover.
tying
But
so many things
Ishtara's
in.
faith was unyielding, and her charge was unbroken. Even as the shadow of a leaping knight preceptor eclipsed the sun over her head.
Teasing this for multiple
The mechanical
episodes.
soldier
Damn you.
landed 30 paces in front of the canoness, quaking the streets and towers around them as it did, rising and charging like an avatar of the Emperor's own wrath. Grinning grimly,
Wouldn't that be a side
Ishtara
titan, though?
accepted the challenge. Swords raised against the sky, wounded
having
with
a kill
lines
off.
of fire and temporary artificial stars.
Dude.
They charged into the fray, blades and flames singing in the wake of the roaring night.
Oh, dude. Okay, so in all honesty, that was just. If this is something Fan starts doing, where instead of just having the sudden cutoff, which is kind of what happened with the space battle, but then taking us a bit into what happens next to show where this is going, because if the next part of the fight isn't going down to the battle and fighting giant freaking knights with the war suits and everything going all out, I am looking forward to what happens next, because giant freaking mechs, man. It's right up there with spaceships. We got a few spaceships in particular here, and I was expecting the guy to die because he was so over the top arrogant. Admittedly, I thought the Imperium side would as well, because her entire thing was also over the top arrogant. But then she was outdone by the other guys. Like, okay, yeah, no, I see where this is going. And it did. Kind of surprised the ship didn't blow up, but maybe that comes later. Just, I like this. This is not so much a cliffhanger, which every goddamn episode was prior to this. This is very much a teaser. This is Fan just shifting into a bit of the next episode to give us that little flavor of everything we're going to get. And as long as it actually goes into this, that is awesome. Less surprising, but more of a, hey, you've waited, here it comes type moment, which probably only works because we're so used to cliffhangers and being surprised to see what comes next, which is usually not whatever just happened prior. Basically what I'm saying is, if you haven't, there's a link below to the video, and I made sure to change it so it's correct this time. Fan did an amazing job. Kubik did some great art, and I just love this. This is so cool, man. I'm also really glad that I can make it through the entire video, because this entire stream was a test to see if I could do a stream this long again. The longest video I had recorded prior to this was like 50 minutes, which sounds like a lot because it was, but I also lost my voice for the next 40 hours. I didn't record anything for a couple days. This, I still can talk. I can feel it. It's rough, but I'm getting over the flu finally. That is nice. So if you haven't, you guys know the deal. Link below. Hit up the video for Fan. Go leave a like, comment, subscribe. Let him know he did a great job. He might even still be in the chat, but I just want to avoid the chat right now in case there's spoilers, because that occasionally happens. Now, if you don't mind, I'm going to go put ice on my throat because even though I'm making it through, I can feel it and it hurts. I'll see you guys tomorrow when I do, I think, yep, tomorrow is the other half of the Hunter the Parenting video. And, yeah. All the same. I'll see you guys in the next one. And I'll probably put out a poll for what video to do next, because a few I'm trying to work around. I might do a live stream as well. See what happens. All the same. I'll see you guys then. Adios.